Good evening, good evening, good evening. This is Marie Holiday, and today is Monday, November the 2nd, 2020. And I hope everybody had a fabulous weekend. Before I get into today's topic, I just want to remind my viewers and my subscribers to hit that notification button. And if you have not hit that subscribe button, do so you all can be notified of my ongoing uploads. So with that being said, let's get down to today's topic. I want to talk about there are 5 stages of change. The stages of change model that I'm going to introduce, I'm going to describe the 5 stages that people go through on their way to change. 5 distinct stages that people go through on their way to change. I also do this 5 stages of change lecture a lot in the field of addiction. And when I say change, I mean change to anything, not just to alcohol or drugs. But I'm going to specifically gear this lecture to the audience in relation to the 5 stages of change that an alcoholic or drug addict or gambling addict will go through on their way to change. Now, this can apply to any kind of change, but I'm going to narrow my focus for the purposes of this video after I drink a little bit of coffee. So, the 5 stages of change: number 1, pre-contemplation. Explain all of them. Number 2, contemplation. Number 3, preparation. Number 4, action. And number 5, maintenance. And at the end, I'm going to give a description of what relapse is. So these 5 stages of change model will describe the process of the stages that the alcohol or drug user or the gambler user will go through on their way to change. Number 1, pre-contemplation. Pre-contemplation, what pre-contemplation is when a person can be doing any kind of high-risk behavior, not just the alcohol or drug use, but it can be the alcohol or drug use, the gambling addiction, the stealing, creating chaos in the environment. But for someone who's in the pre-contemplation stage of change, in relation to alcohol or drug use or gambling addiction, the person is aware that their use is out of control, their addiction is out of control, the gambling is out of control, and they're okay with that. They have no desire to change. They're not thinking about changing. And you got to understand, audience, that that's a stage, a distinct stage, pre-contemplation. So when a person is in pre-contemplation stage of change in relation to addiction, alcohol, drugs, or gambling, many people may have talked to them, many people may have begged them to stop. They may have even gone to treatment just to appease a family member. People do that a lot. They're in a treatment because the mother, father, sister, brother, or the niece and nephew want them to get help and stop. They're not doing it for them. They're doing it for the family members. So for someone who's in the pre-contemplation stage of change, they have no desires to change. They have no desire to quit. That's where they at. And sometimes a person can be in that stage for years. And you just have to accept that. And then we got contemplation. Contemplation stage of change. For the alcoholic or the drug addict or the gambling who's in the contemplation stage of change, they still may be doing the high-risk behavior, the excessive alcohol use, drug use, gambling, causing financial destruction, wreaking havoc on everybody's lives around them. But a person who's in contemplation stage of change, they may still be doing all this, but they may begin to think about changing. The thought is there. They can still be doing it, but the thought to change is there. Because remember, in contemplation stage, the person was doing all these things, alcohol, drug use, gambling, addiction, and creating chaos in the world, but they had no desire or thought of changing. But in contemplation stage, they can still be doing the behavior, but the thought is there. That's just like a person, if they're addicted to nicotine and addicted to cigarettes, and they're smoking and smoking and smoking and have no desire to stop, but then one day they may go to the doctor, and the doctor may tell them, look, your lungs don't look too good, we're concerned about this spot on your lungs, and the person may be told this by the doctor, and they're still smoking, but the thought in their mind may come, I might need to listen to that doctor because that doctor knows what they're talking about. So that's someone who's a contemplator. They are thinking about change, hadn't done it yet, but at least the thought is there. And then we have the preparation stage of change. The preparation stage of change is for someone who have maybe been using alcohol and drugs and gambling addiction for years and years and years. They may have seen the destruction it may have caused, the financial destruction, the family destruction, loss of everything. So they now wake up one morning and take a real good look at themselves in the mirror and say, my God, I better do something about this. I better make some type of plan to make a change. That's preparation, where the user or the gambler now, because so much has occurred, may begin to prepare to make a change, to make phone calls, to find out about different programs they can go to, whether it's detox, residential, outpatient, or individual counseling. So they're making phone calls, they're asking around on places I can go to get help. So that's the preparation stage of change, when the person is literally planning, they're planning to make a change. They're going through the process to prepare to make a change. Rather, it's making phone calls or following some other recommendations, or picking up this telephone number and getting ready to prepare to make that call. So that's the preparation stage of change. And then we have the action stage of change. And for the person who has alcohol or drug addiction or gambling addiction, so for someone who's in the action stage of change, they have moved past the thought, they have moved past the preparation, now they have executed the plan. Now they have set an appointment, and they are now at that counselor's office, or they are admitted into that treatment program, or admitted into that detox program, or they are seeking out support groups, AA groups, NA groups, Gambling Anonymous group. They now have executed the plan. Talk is cheap. It's all about action. They are now going on those appointments. They are now in that treatment program. Because they've already done the preparation to get there. So now action is now the person is actually doing something about the problem. They're physically doing something. They're following through on their words. They're following through on all that preparation. Now they have got the help that they need. They're in that treatment program in order to make changes. So that's the action stage of change. And then the fifth stage of change is maintenance. Maintenance, the maintenance stage of change. Now that that person got treatment, whether it's detox or residential or outpatient or support groups or a sponsor, they're doing good. They have restored their livelihood. They have restored their family. They have restored their credit. They have restored their financial livelihood. They have restored all this because they took action. So now what the maintenance phase is, they got to do some things to maintain the change. They got to do some things to maintain their sobriety. They got to do some things to continue to remove and keep the alcohol and drugs and the gambling addiction out of their life. Because they work long and hard to get to the action step. So maintenance is, you got to set up some goals in order to sustain your sobriety, in order to sustain your lifestyle change. And some of the things that you may do in maintenance phase, in terms of sustaining it, some people get a sponsor. So when things get going a little rough, they can pick up the phone and call somebody. Some people get the support of their family. So the support of a sponsor, support of a family, in order to maintain their lifestyle change. Some people make a deliberate decision to stay away from certain places, people, and things that they know that will be a trigger for them to relapse back to their old lifestyle. So they're doing all these things to sustain the change when you're looking at the 5 stages of change in relation to alcohol and drug addiction. So again, the 5 stages of change is pre-contemplation, when the person has no desire or thought to change. They're doing whatever they're doing, making a high-risk lifestyle, they ain't changing, leave me alone, I don't want nobody to bother me, pre-contemplation. Contemplation stage of change. Contemplation stage of change is the person can still be partaking in the high-risk lifestyle, the alcohol, the drug use, the gambling, and the destruction. But the difference in the contemplation stage is they may now or begin to think about, the thought is there. They ain't done no changes yet, but the thought is there in order to make the change. Then we got preparation. The preparation stage of change now is the person is beginning to plan, look at a menu of options, and begin to make some phone calls to prepare themselves for a lifestyle change. In the action stage of change, the person now is executing the plan of action. All that planning they were doing, they're now executing. It's about action. They're going into that treatment program, whether it's detox, rather than to individual sessions, etc., getting a sponsor. They're physically doing something about the problem. And then maintenance. Once they have achieved their goal of sobriety, achieved their goal of lifestyle change, maintenance stage of change is now the person got to come up with like a maintenance plan, or some steps that they're going to do to maintain their sobriety, to maintain their lifestyle change. And that maintenance can be, or getting a sponsor. That maintenance can be support family. That maintenance can be maybe talking to a counselor, every so often, to do something. That maintenance could be staying away, making a deliberate decision to stay away from certain people, places, and things, so they won't relapse. And since I mentioned the word relapse, what relapse is in reality, if after I drink this coffee, in the field of addiction, what relapse is, I just introduced the world to the stage of change. What relapse is, and a person can be in sobriety for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years in relapse. And I'm going to do a whole video upload on some of the indicators of relapse. Because relapse don't just occur. There are many things going on prior to the actual relapse. But that's a whole nother discussion. But if I were to just briefly describe what relapse is when the individual returns to an earlier stage of change. So think about it. I just introduced pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, and action. They are no longer in maintenance. So relapse is in a person is no longer in the maintenance phase of change. So what has happened is they have relapsed, and they are now going to return to an earlier stage of change. Rather, it's action, preparation, contemplation, or pre-contemplation. A person may relapse and immediately discover, I've relapsed, let me go get some treatment again, let me get in contact with that counselor. So that's action. So they relapse, now have returned to an earlier stage of change. It don't necessarily have to be action. A person can relapse and return back to pre-contemplation stage of change. Remember, pre-contemplation is they have no desire to change. So relapse is returning to an earlier stage of change. What is pre-contemplation? The person has no desire to change. They may have been in sobriety for 6 months and relapse, and they just may now, they have released that addiction all over again, and they may tell themselves, that recovery don't work. I'm just going to continue to use and use and use and use and use. Leave me alone. I'm never returning back to treatment. That's pre-contemplation. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you that relapse is to return back to an earlier stage of change. You're no longer in the maintenance phase of change. What are the 5 types of stages of change in relation to substance abuse? Pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. Those are the 5 stages. And I'm here to tell you that that process, that is the process that alcohol and drug addicts and gambling addicts go through on their way to change. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope you got something out of this. Semper Fi, Semper Fidelis, and I will see you all again next time.